Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to build a large cylindrical tube out of a grid work of small, simple subunits. Now, the actual cylinder I'm going to be building out of these normal silver-colored magnets, but in order to demonstrate the grid work structure, I've laid out some colored magnets here just as an initial demonstration. The grid is made up of two types of subunits. One type are these simple squares of 4 magnets. The other type are made with a chain of 12 magnets. They're made by first making a square, then going around the outside just like that. You need about an equal number of each type of subunit to make any type of grid work like this. What you do is you attach these onto the corners like that. Then you can add more of these subunits like that, and you can go all the way around in a square, in fact, which gives you something that looks like that on top. You can take 4 more of these and go around in a square, connecting between each of the 2 larger blue subunits to give you something like that. Then you can take more of these and add them all around the outside. To give you a nice little grid work pattern like that. On the underside, there are now some gaps which you can fill in with these small squares. And so what you end up with is a kind of a square grid work of these 2 subunits, which appears like this on the back to give you a sense of what's going on the back. This is the side that will eventually be the interior of the cylinder. Now, these are interesting arrangements because this has a lot of flex to it. It's kind of hard to tell using a small bit like this. So I'm going to bring out a larger piece, which we'll be using later. This, you can tell, has a definite curvature. It has a radius of curvature that it kind of wants to be at, but it's also flexible. It can curve this way, or it can curve that way. It can do either way. But it has a specific radius of curvature that it likes to be at, and that becomes more apparent when you get bigger pieces like that. Now, given the nature of this shape, there's not really a right way to build it. There's a lot of different right ways. So I'm going to show you what works for me, and if you want to experiment around with other methods, feel free. What I like to do is start off by making 4 of these subunits. These are 11 of the larger ones and 11 of the smaller ones arranged in a zigzag. So it starts off just like I was showing you earlier, with 2 magnets added together like that, and then another subunit there. At this point, I would add the second one of these there like that, and then you can add another one here and another one here. And you can start to see what I'm doing. I'm going in a zigzag pattern, alternating between large and small subunits. And I'm going to do that until I have something that is 6 magnets long on one, or 6 squares long on one side and 5 on the other. To begin building the cylinder, again, you need 4 of these kind of sub-assemblies. What I do is I have 2 of them like this, and then I have the other 2 turned upside down. Oh yeah, upside down. So what you do is these just attach just like that. And at this point, you've got about a half circle. You can do the same thing again with these two, just like that. Another half circle. And now, I can't quite pull it up in front of the camera because these are a little fragile at this point, but you just attach them together and attach them together. And that is how you make the smallest possible cylinder here. You can see at this point it's very flexible. It gets a little bit more rigid the taller you make it. So before we make it any taller, you'll see that these edges are kind of jagged sawtooth edges. So how do we fix that? I'm gonna, rather than demonstrate on this and risk messing it up, I'm going to demonstrate on one of these. And I seem to have a focus issue, hold on. So as I was saying, rather than show it here, because I can't quite pull it up in front of the camera well enough, I'm going to show you on one of these subsections. What you do to get this segment smooth is pretty simple. You just take this magnet that's protruding out there, pull it off, and move it over to where it goes right there. And you can do that to all of them, which will give you an edge that looks like that, which is a smooth edge that it can sit on. Now eventually what's going to happen is that these gaps there will get filled in, these ones here, by single magnets, which can just go in like that. But I'm going to save that for later. I'm going to go ahead and do that process to this whole edge of this ring. Okay, and now as I said earlier, I'm going to take a bunch of single magnets and add one to each of these square subunits to fill in the middle, just like that. Okay, and now I've done this entire edge. Again, that gives you something that looks like that once you've completed it. Now you can flip it over onto that edge and it has something a little bit more solid to rest on compared to what it had before. Now we can get into different ways of making this taller. I think probably the most basic way of doing that is to just get 22 small and 22 larger subunits and just add them all on. You start by taking the small subunits and putting them there on each of the larger subunits and going around in a ring of 22 just like that. Okay, and when you've added all 22 of those on in an arrangement like that, you can then go ahead and put 22 of the larger subunits on directly in between each of them, just like that. Now, I may have just said that the previous method is the most basic way to increase the height of the cylinder, but it's not really my preferred way. It's a lot of work, you're adding a lot of small pieces on. What I prefer instead is to just make more of these subunits. And you can add them on just the way you might expect, just directly on top, just like this. And you can keep adding them on. It takes 4 to go all the way around the cylinder, as you might expect. Don't forget to alternate the alignment. So you do one like this, then the next one will go like that, and then like the first one, and then this way again. Just like that. Now, if you would rather have, a smaller number of larger subunits, you can take 2 of these and attach them together like this beforehand, and you can make 4 of those. And don't forget to turn 2 of them around so you can alternate the orientation. But again, just with these ones, be a little bit more careful because they are larger and there's a little bit more potential for having a connection go wrong. Okay, and that's how you can use somewhat larger subunits. If you really want to get ambitious with large subunits, you can use big pieces like these. These are 5 of the small strips that I showed earlier stacked on top of each other rather than just 2. And these work just fine as well. You just do have to be very careful with them, but they add on exactly the same way. Just like that. And there you go. I would say that's a pretty tall cylinder at this point. Now what you need to do is finish off this edge the same way you did with the other one. You take that off the point, move it over one, place it there so you have an edge like that, and go around and do all of them. Okay, and now that there's a nice even edge on the top of the cylinder, you are down to the last step, which is the most time consuming, and honestly I would say that it's even optional if you want to consider it that way, because you really already built the cylinder. The issue is that if you look at the wall of the cylinder, it is full of these little gaps, so you can see like that. And you can also tell, see by now it's much more rigid, not nearly as floppy as it was earlier. You can actually pick it up and handle it once it's got a decent amount of height to it. But if you want to fill all those gaps up, what you need to do is take single magnets and just go through and fill every little gap with one magnet. And this is going to take a while. I'm not going to show the whole process because this is going to take well over an hour to do all of these. So I'm going to go take it over to the other table and watch a TV show while I do it. And just over an hour later, I've only got this little patch left to fill in the gaps. There you go. All the gaps are filled, and that is how you build this cylinder. Now this is a pretty strong cylinder, I think, so I'm going to see how much weight I can put on this roughly before it crumbles.